Whatever you're going through, you will get through it because you're here. And that means you are not alone. This is The Meaningful Meeting. Now your host, Ace Cannon.
6 weeks, 8 weeks, year and a half. What's it been? So this is the offshoot of the old Ace at Large podcast. So as we start The Meaningful Meeting, if you're new, my name is Ace from the Ace and TJ Show. And I had a podcast called Ace at Large. And the old Ace at Large podcast came to an end effectively on July 29th, 2021, mainly because the name no longer fit. When Ace at Large originally began, it was about whatever I wanted it to be about that particular week. It was about a wide variety of things. We covered some very important topics. We really did. It was just a lot of fun. And then once my daughter passed away, I just felt this need to share with people because of this incredible outpouring of love and support that I had received from members of the Ace and TJ radio family. And I began to think, what if everybody doesn't have this? Because let's face it, everybody doesn't have that. Everybody doesn't have a pretty large radio audience to support them and love them and care for them and send wonderful messages. And so I planned to return when we ended that, July 29th, 2021, a very important date, because that was the 1-year anniversary of my daughter's death. And I said, hey, we'll be back in about 6 or 8 weeks. We're going to create something new because I kind of needed a break, needed to refocus, needed to get a new name. And things just began to change so drastically in my life, in all our lives during that time, that it never just felt good. It never felt right. It never could seem to be a good time to bring it back. And that very day, July 29th, 2021, was the day we had lunch with a reporter in Charlotte about our new venture. That was, the Mothership Market of Charlotte. We were leaving the radio to do everything strictly on our app, just in the Mothership Market of Charlotte, leaving iHeartMedia after 11 very successful years. And finally, after that day was all over, I was able to focus on the most important thing that day. And that was the fact that after all of these things, I spent an entire day recording a podcast, going to a lunch meeting, doing an interview. And then about 2:30 that afternoon, I reached a point where I was able to focus on the most important thing of the day. And that thing was the first anniversary of my daughter's death. And it was on that day during the recording of that particular podcast that I told you we'll be back. Well, here we are. We're back. We're back as something called The Meaningful Meeting. And we're here because we're all going through something. Now, I'm here because this is for me. The thought that I might be sharing something that is helpful to others, that's helpful to me. I don't mean for that to sound selfish, but it does come at a price. I'm as open as I can be about my life. I'm as open as I can be about my struggles. I don't claim to be any sort of, and if you've been familiar with me for any length of time, I don't claim to be any sort of expert. I'm no mental health professional. I'm just a guy who's been through a lot of stuff. And I try to take my personal experiences and put them into some type of format whereby they could be helpful to others, because doing that is helpful to me. So let's go back to that day, July 29th, 2021. That day is going to be very important as we go forward. That day when I said I was going to come back. Well, give me 6 or 8 weeks, I say. We'll be back with something brand new. I didn't know what that was, didn't know what it would look like. And it took a long time. And it wasn't until recently that it really began to become clear that this is what I wanted it to be. And we mess with different names and different ideas. And it comes down to being a meeting every week that we're here because we just need a little something. I feel the need to give you something. I feel the need for you to give me something. They have meetings for everything. They have meetings for people struggling with alcoholism. They have meetings for people struggling with depression. They have, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. There are all types of meetings, but this one really doesn't have a particular thought, a particular theme to every meeting. Each week will be different from the others. We'll be sharing some stories. We'll be sharing some ideas. We'll be having some guests on who've done some incredible things to try to overcome what they've experienced in life. But that's what it's all about. We're all here because we're all going through something. So stay with me for a minute. I think a lot of people, in some way, many people are experiencing similar feelings, even though your situation may be different. This will sound weird, but I read Ric Flair's biography. And something really stood out to me. And this is how I kind of tie all this together. The Nature Boy Ric Flair, professional wrestler, widely considered the greatest in-ring performer of all time. The greatest. Not just of his generation, of any generation. Top 3 all time at least. So when reading his book, I was taken by the fact that there was a period of time when, while he was still at the top of his game, he lost his confidence. Completely lost confidence in himself. Completely lost confidence in his ability to perform. Completely began to doubt himself and wasn't sure that he could still do it. That stuck with me because you think about the fact that if you're considered the greatest of all time at what it is you do, and that person can lose confidence in him or herself, it can happen to anybody. And it happened to me. And it seemed like in many ways it started on that day, July 29th, 2021. And in reality, it started before that. July 29th, 2020. 2 years ago, I lost my daughter. She died in a car crash. Many of you know the story. I'm not going to belabor the point, but in case anybody hasn't, we had dinner on the evening of the 28th, July 28th, 2020. And she walked out the door, and if I'm not mistaken, the last words I said to her, "I'll see you tomorrow." She said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And that day never came. So we're dealing with that. I was engaged at the time. 6 months later, I spent what was the greatest week of my life with my now wife, Amanda, in Jamaica, where we got married. We had a great honeymoon. Everyone was there except Peyton, obviously. But inside, the week was incredible. But inside, I was 6 months from her death and still just racked with guilt. And I think anybody who's experienced a tremendous loss, however you've experienced this loss, even when you're not technically involved, you are involved, especially if it's the loss of a child in some way, because you wonder, did I do enough for her as her father? Did the divorce that her mom and I went through, did that somehow affect her in a negative way that contributed to her death? And as I read up and studied up on loss, these were common questions that a lot of people experienced. Even though I wasn't there, a parent often feels a sense of guilt, a sense of second guessing him or herself as to what they could have done differently. And then we went through a contract situation, and this joy that I felt coming from my marriage and my personal life and this new chapter that I was opening in life was tempered somewhat by these feelings of guilt, these feelings of loss that I had from my daughter. And then February 2021, just married a month, I was really kind of purposefully made to feel, in my opinion, unimportant and unwanted by people that we as a show, our collective radio program, had worked with and been successful for years. And that's the big boy world. That's how contract negotiations go. But I think because of this, the way I was feeling at the time based around Peyton's death, the pain, the guilt. I mean, remember, we're just 6 months. She's only been dead 6 months. It really affected me in a very negative way. And due to COVID, we had to close our charity of 21 years, Grin Kids. We didn't close it. It became something different. We rolled it into a charity that's now known as Peyton's Promise. And that's great. We didn't lose that charity completely, but it still felt like a loss to me. And I was just reeling from everything. Really not believing in myself, not ready to come back and do this, that's for sure. Because I didn't feel like I had anything to give to you. 6 months ago, just over 6 months ago, my wife lost her biological father who lived in Florida. Just a couple of weeks ago, I lost my mom. And in all of this loss and all of these feelings of inadequacy and lack of confidence that I've been feeling for a long time, I've come to find out there are some truths in life. And this is one of those things that I hope that I can share with you, that you can take with you, that will help you through a difficult time. Because here's where you need someone. You always need someone. And sometimes you've just got to do it. You're always going to need someone. Never be afraid to draw on inspiration in any form from someone, anyone, however you get it. It doesn't have to be somebody telling you, hey, you're great. Hey, you can do this. The inspiration to get up and make the change and to keep going. I always talk about my mom in these situations. My mom always said, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and eventually you're going to get somewhere. Never be afraid to draw on inspiration in any form from someone. Could be a book, could be someone saying something on a television show, could be an article you read, could be a TikTok. I don't care. Something could move you to realize it's time to get back up on the horse, so to speak. Something could move you to inspire you. I'll give you one of mine. Now, I have a couple in my life that I'm very blessed to have. I have my wife, but I felt like I was failing her. So even then, in those times because there's a lot of stuff going on when you have such a big general business change like we have. There's an investment, which puts a strain on your finances, that sort of thing. So I felt like I was failing her. But I have this incredible group of friends. And I can give you one example. My childhood best friend, my friend Alan, called me one day and said, I'm going to send you something. I want you to read this book, and I want you to work with me and be a part of this project. And the book is called Greatness by a guy named David Cook. It's only 100 pages long. And he sent me that because he believed in me. He sent me that because he knew that I'd been going through a difficult time, and he had been experiencing some difficulties as the CEO of a corporation. He had a lot going on. And then he sent it to me because he believed in me and wanted me to know that he believed in me. And as many times have in the past, his confidence in me gave me confidence. Just a little, just enough to say, okay, I need to invest in this, because if this person's willing to invest in me, the book cost $100, by the way. And he sent it to me. He said, and it says in the beginning, someone believes in you enough. Someone believes that you have enough greatness in you that they were willing to spend $100 for you to get this edition of this book. And so a triangle was formed, a triangle of potential greatness, so to speak, between my friend Scott, my friend Alan, and he brought me in, and another friend of ours, Scott. We've all kind of grown up together. And I draw on those two people for inspiration because they believe that I have something in me that I couldn't really see at the time. They invited me to be a part of this special project because they believed in me. My Charity Case family, my brothers in Charity Case, my band, believed in me. When I made the announcement about Pedaling for Peyton, they immediately stepped up and collected $500, and they were in for the Peyton's Promise 500, one of the very first ones to do it. Man, I want to make them proud now. I can't let them down. These are just a few of the constants in my life. So number one, never be afraid to draw on inspiration in any form from someone. These are two places that I'm finding it these days, just because they're people that, for whatever reason, continue to believe in me, and I needed that. Here may be the most important thing of the day, though. Here's one of the most important things. Sometimes you just have to do it. For example, I got this inspiration, and all these things tie together. It sounds like it's kind of a mess right now, but watch how it all flows together. I began to feel a little bit of confidence because these people believed in me. You know, I drew on my inspiration and decided this year, July 29th, 2022, I'm going to do something different. The first anniversary of my daughter's death was a horrible day. You know, I mentioned to you, we did the show. I did a podcast, that last podcast for Ace at Large. I had to do this interview with the Charlotte Observer. And by the time that was all done, it was 2:30 in the afternoon. Now, the entire day, from the moment I went to bed the night before until that moment, I had been building the entire day just to get to the time that I could take it in. The fact that this was my daughter's first anniversary of her death. And I just kept putting it off all day and have to put it off all day, have to put it off all day. And at that point, I just gave in. I just collapsed. And I cried and I was angry and I yelled and I spent the entire afternoon and evening alone. Took my boat, went out on the lake because that's her favorite place. That's where she spent most of her time, on that boat, on that lake. I was out there by myself, just crying and trying to make sense of it all. And as I look back on it, I was so disappointed because when I gave her eulogy that day at her funeral, one of the things I talked about was the fact that we now have to do more. We all have to work harder. We have to love more. We have to reach out to more people. And I thought, I didn't do a very good job of that. So I decided leading up to July 29th, 2022, what I was going to do. We're going to ride this bicycle. We were going to launch Peyton's Promise 500. That's 500 people giving $500 a year. It's like $41.67 a month for 12 years. Launch that, give that money to Peyton's Promise. It would be, and we use Peyton's Promise to do so many good things in her name. So leading up to July 29th of 2022, and we'll take you a little behind the scenes here. There were several conversations, discussions, thoughts, and I just decided I'm going to do this. The conversations, discussions, and thoughts were about saying something big is coming, but not getting into the details. You know, I was told by people from a sponsor side, from a sales side, whatever, hey, don't say what exactly you want to do. Just put it out there that we're going to do something big. Well, that's not very beneficial to me. I decided not to wait. I needed this. I needed to do this. It was important to me. Remember, sometimes you just have to do it. And I believed in my heart, because of the little bit of confidence that I was given, I can do something special here. I can do something important. But most importantly, I need to do this. I need to do something important. I need to do something special. I need to put myself out there. So I'm not going to wait. So we made the announcement. I'm going to ride that bike from our studios to the studios of our affiliate in Birmingham, Mix 97.3. I'm going to do that. That did not go over well with a lot of people behind the scenes, with a lot of people on the sales and sponsorship side of what it is that we do. Show people loved it. DJ loved it. Riggins loved it. Alexis loved it. Rob loved it. Other people very upset because they thought I was going to wait. And I can't wait. I was trying to explain, I'm not going to wait. I can't wait. We have to find a way to do this. I need this. Sometimes you've just got to do it. I just believed in it. I needed to believe in it. And we built it every step of the way, and everybody worked hard, and the people on the sales and sponsorship side understood, man, okay, we're in. We'll buy in. We'll do this. We'll figure out a way to make it work. We made the announcement on July 29th. And last Friday, I crossed the finish line in Birmingham at Mix 97.3. And thanks to our incredible radio family, we raised over $57,000 for Peyton's Promise in 8 days. We did it. We did it. I did it. You did it. Everybody on the Ace and TJ show did it. Everybody chipped in. Everybody did their part. But I couldn't have, if we had waited, it might not have ever happened. Sometimes you just got to do it. I took that inspiration from somebody else. I took the little bit of confidence that I'd been given by some other people and decided I've got to do it. And here we go. Because sometimes you just have to do it. And we started. And why was it so important to me? Here's why it was so important to me. It was important to me because I needed to believe in myself again. I talked about that on one of the daily videos and got a great reaction from people. I needed to believe, in some ways, I needed to believe that God was still there for me. I've been mad at God for a long time. And if you go back and watch, I think it's the day 4 video. Such a moving, important day in my life. And I also did it because of things like this message. I am not sharing this with you to stroke my own ego. I'm just sharing this with you because it's important in my life. And I hope you can get something from it the way I have. It says, good morning. I just wanted to extend a huge thank you to Ace. Last week was so inspirational and gave me so much encouragement to not give up. Ace, despite all the challenges you have faced, not only last week, but the last couple of years, you have not given up. You have continued to push through everything your life throws your way. After following your journey last week on the bike, I have been able to get through the worst 2 weeks of my life. I had a miscarriage at 11 weeks, 4 days into my pregnancy. I still have a little ways to go emotionally, but Ace showed me last week and over the last couple of years that there will be rough days, but you can get through them one day at a time. So thank you. And thank you all for making me smile and laugh on a regular basis. I will forever be a fan of the show. Another lady wrote, Ace, I wanted to let you know that your bike ride has helped me. My husband and I were involved at a church in Tennessee, and my husband rocked being the behind-the-scene guy on 2 rides to raise funds doing bike rides. Our ministry in Tennessee did not end well and left me broken. You showed me that there are people out there that work hard and help those in need. I cried watching your last video, and it was a breaking point for me. Although we were treated wrong and our pastor/best friend turned on us, I now have hope again. So thank you for enduring a week of hard work, aches, and pains, and helping me remember all the people that have and will be helped by people like you. We followed the entire ride and reminisced on happy times when he did the same thing that Mr. Todd did, minus almost wrecking a Jeep. And I don't read that to you to blow smoke and tell you how great I am. Because I'm not. I'm a real flawed person. One of my worst qualities is the fact that I can pick apart my flaws. I'm pretty self-aware, but I focus on my flaws so much so that it makes me depressed at times. But I'm really blessed. And I hope that we have something to share here. And I hope that if nothing else from today, you take the fact that you should never be afraid to open yourself up to inspiration in any form from anywhere. And remember, sometimes against the odds, sometimes against other people's better judgment, if you assess the situation, look at your own history, and in your heart, you just believe, you just believe. Sometimes you just have to do it. So each week, the Meaningful Meeting is going to end with what I call the final 5 minutes. One thought to take with you about how you treat yourself over the rest of the week. It's a very simple thought this week. Don't treat yourself like a news story. We'll explain next.
the one meeting you actually need each week. There's more of the Meaningful Meeting with Ace coming up.
The Johnson Group Facility Services is a commercial cleaning company that focuses more on customer satisfaction than the bottom line because each customer works directly with the owners every step of the way. If you need any commercial cleaning, the Johnson Group can handle it. Get details at acetj.com/clean.
If you want to sleep better and lose weight, then the product that you need is called Calitrin, or you can pronounce it Calitrin. Very easy for you to get. Just go to acetj.com/weight loss. acetj.com/weight loss for Calitrin.
This is the one meeting that reminds you each week that you are not alone. This is the Meaningful Meeting with Ace Cannon.
So the final 5 minutes, try to keep it to exactly 5 minutes each week. It's very simple. It's one thought that I want you to take with you for the week in addition to all the other stuff that we talk about. Something to consider, something to work on, something easy. Now, full disclosure here, quite often it's because that's what I'm working on this week. Quite often this is going to be about the thing that I'm trying to impress upon myself this week. This week, here's the thought. Don't treat yourself like a news story. I've said many times, my degree is in broadcast journalism. And it was a very different world when I graduated from college at LSU in 1991. We talked a lot about ethics and both sides of the story and being fair. And I don't think that's a lot of the stuff that's done these days. Because one of the things I pointed out many times when it comes to the news, especially on my old podcast, I would give you examples. You get the truth, but you don't necessarily get the whole truth. Nobody's saying anything that's wrong. They're just not giving you all of the facts. They may tell you parts of a story that are true, but leave out other parts of a story because it doesn't quite fit the narrative, or those parts kind of get in the way of what they want you to know. So how does that come into you? Well, I was reminded of this and how you treat yourself, rather. I was reminded of this earlier this week. I was listening to a podcast, an episode of the Matt Walsh podcast. He was making this point that I made years ago, and cited a recent article by a guy named Joran Longberg in the Financial Post. In the news article, the guy wrote, quote, "It's easy to believe life on Earth is getting worse. The media constantly highlights one catastrophe after another and makes terrifying predictions," end quote. Then he goes on to point out how you're not getting the full story. That while they're telling you about all the bad stuff, and it may be rooted in fact, here are the facts, these things are happening, what they're not giving you is, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. The world is getting better. Over the past century, people are much safer from weather events. In the 1920s, 500,000 people were killed by weather disasters. In the last decade, it's averaging about 18,000. Things like the Great Barrier Reef, that a decade ago was declared dead. It has the highest coral cover ever seen since they started taking records in 1985. That was last year, this past time they checked it. Nobody's come back and told you that part. They tell us all about the terrible disasters and the world's coming to an end, but in reality, they don't point out the fact that we're actually safer than we've ever been. So I'm not pointing out anything about the environment. My point is, this is about you and me. Don't treat yourself like the news. Don't just report the bad stuff. Don't just report the tragedy. Don't just report the part that's got you down. And by report it, I mean reporting it to yourself. Report the good part of the story also. Remind yourself of the little wins. Remind yourself of the successes that you've had in the past. Remind yourself of the hopes and dreams and goals. Don't treat your life like the media would treat a news story. Don't just report the bad stuff about you to you. This is something I have to work on in my life. I'm not good at this. I struggle with this. I focus on the bad. Even though I am constantly reminding myself how blessed I am, It's part of the thing that always makes me feel like an underachiever. Always makes me feel like I haven't done enough. Always makes me feel like I haven't lived up to the expectations that I set for myself. Like I haven't lived up to my potential because I constantly just report the bad stuff to myself. Don't be the media. Tell yourself the entire story. Yes, understand, realize, be aware of the bad stuff. Work on the bad stuff. But remind yourself that there is good, that you're doing well, that you're not as bad off as you think. Remember to report the good things in your life to yourself. You are your life's reporter. And remember to share the good part of that story, because we all need that. One thing we bring over from the old Ace at Large podcast is this reminder, because this is the core of why we're here. And it's a quote that you've seen a million times on social media, but it's one of the rare things that I've seen on social media that has always stuck with me. And it's very simple. This is the reason we don't give up. This is the reason we come here every week to the Meaningful Meeting, because one day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you are going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. And I can't think of anything better than to think that of all the things that I've been through in my life and all the struggles that I've had and all these disappointments that I've had, that there's not something in here that could help you get through whatever it is you're experiencing. And I hope you'll share your stories with me, because I need them to help me get through what I'm experiencing. See you next week on the Meaningful Meeting.
Now, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. You are a part of the Meaningful Meeting, presented by the Radio Network. Copyright ATJ Inc. 2022.